and welcome to Filmmakers Forum. I'm your host, Rachel Nema. Today, Bill True joins us to discuss the art of screenwriting. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you.
So, how long have you been screenwriting?
I sold my first script in 2003, near the end of 2003, and I guess I tell people I haven't had an honest job since. So I guess 9 years, going on 10 years.
Oh, wow. So, would you say that by this point in your career that, screenwriting just comes naturally to you?
That's a really good question, because I think a common misconception is from people that all writers, in all writers, writing just kind of comes naturally to them, and I actually think it's one of the most unnatural things out there. There was a quote that I read on Facebook recently, actually, and I'm going to butcher it, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was really the quote was really the difference between a writer and a regular person is that writing is more difficult for writers. I consider myself a storyteller, and if there was a better, easier way for me to convey what's in my head to you, to convey my stories, I would use that, But unfortunately, the only way that I have is to, sit in front of a computer and type for hours and hours and hours on end, and ultimately, you're mastering things like craft and structure, and it's really it's like any other craft. You've really got to take time, and you really have to spend time mastering it,
Yeah. Oh, so you were explaining to one of your classes earlier this week about the movie operating system.
Right.
Let's go ahead and take a look at that clip.
Okay. This is actually how a story operates. A story starts with a guy, okay? Or it could be a girl, but we'll make this a guy, and we'll call him Bob, right? And Bob, at the beginning of the story, doesn't feel so great. He's in a situation where he doesn't really want to be, or if he wants to be in it, he's not really learned a lesson yet, right? He's in kind of the doldrums of life right now. At the end of the story, though, Bob is in a different situation. Now, I'm going to make a smiley face here because I'm going to say that it's a better situation, but we do know from movies and other stories that sometimes, main characters end up being sadder but wiser, right? But there's definitely a change in the situation between the beginning place that the character's in at the beginning of the movie and the place he or she ends up. And really, by definition, that's a story right there, because a story really is just about the change in the main character's situation from A to B and the way that he feels about himself and the world. Now, in the middle, though, right, we've got to have something in the middle, something to connect these things. So, because the main character doesn't feel so hot here and isn't really in the best situation, he or she eventually applies some sort of solution, right? Because they know that they want to achieve some different state, someplace different than they are right now. So they put some sort of active solution, in place, okay? Now, the problem with that solution is because at the beginning of the story, because as we talked about, movies are all about lessons, because our character at the beginning of the movie has not learned the lesson yet, the solutions that he puts in place are all bad ones.
So, Bill, how can screenwriters use the movie operating system to their fullest advantage?
Well, I think that almost the better way to frame that is that it's the only thing they can use to their advantage, if that makes sense. All movies kind of operate according to the same principle. Whether it's Thor or whether it's Tree of Life, it doesn't matter. I mean, because stories are all the same. Mm-hmm. Most anthropologists will tell you the reason why language exists is for the purpose of us to tell stories together, and all stories are basically the same structure that I pointed out in the movie operating system. And then on top of that, movies themselves, the way audiences process movies, is a very specific, very certain way that operating system kind of follows. And so in reality, the first step in being a really good screenwriter is understanding how movies work. And once you understand how movies work, then you can start putting together stories that flow and operate in a way that movie audiences can process and are entertained by, if that makes sense.
So Where would the best opportunities for, young budding screenwriters like, in the industry?
Well, I think the first opportunity for budding screenwriters is here, actually, at a great school and in writers groups. I know that the common answer to that question that people are looking for is, how do I get optioned, right? How do I break into the business? And unfortunately, I think when you just try to focus on making it, right, one kind of misses the point. And in reality, the best thing that a new budding writer can do is write and write and write and write some more. And when you're sick of writing, even write some more after that. And then when you're really sick of it, keep writing. I mean, that's really the key because writing is a craft. And as we kind of learned in the operating systems we've been talking about, it's something that you really only get better at by practice. I would love to say that it's all inspiration, but like, people say, exercise, whatever, is not 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. Writing is the same thing. It's 10% inspiration, but it's 90% craft, and you really have to spend time doing it. And you have to allow yourself to have enough practice at it that then you can, like a great musician, a great jazz musician, then you can just wail, right? Because you've got enough time and you've got enough experience under your belt where you can feel comfortable with it.
When we return, tips for the budding screenwriter. We'll see you right after the break.
Stop! Please! No! Stop! Stop! Ah! Ah!
Welcome back to Filmmakers Forum. We're talking with screenwriter Bill True. Lastly, I feel like the most important thing for screenwriters to know, what advice would you give to a beginning screenwriter eager to get their work optioned?
Well, I think I'll go back to the idea that for any new screenwriter, keep writing. I mean, it's not only the simplest advice, but it's the most true advice. I mean, I think the mistake that a lot of people make is, I talked before about how it's like 9 or 10% inspiration, 90% craft. I think the mistake that they make is that because it's easy to be a great movie appreciator, and we're a society that processes our lives through movies, and so we look at them and we're learned about them, we understand them, we're conversant in them, we can talk about them, and we think because of that, of course it's just a small step to being able to write them. But in reality, I tell people it's the difference between, how to live in a house, right? And you know what a house is, and you're pretty familiar with houses, and you can talk about the components of a house, but can you build a house, right? It takes practice, it takes time. You can't design a house necessarily, just the way you are. You would need schooling, you would need time, and you need practice to do it. And writing screenplays is the same thing. People think that, I've got a great idea, somebody's going to pick it up and somebody's going to make it. But in reality, when you have that focus and you're trying to get, pay attention to market forces and get people to buy something, you lose creativity. And really what you do is you lose sight of the real truth, which is that writers write. And the more and the more and the more and the more you write, the better that you're going to get at it, and the more practice you are to the point where you're going to have enough facility over it that a producer or a studio will pay attention to you.
Wow, well, you know what? It's been a pleasure having you on the
Thank
show,
you.
Bill.
It's great.
Thank you so much for coming. If you're interested in learning more, you can contact Bill through his website at buildtrue.net. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Filmmakers Forum.